Let us now move to item 8, reform of the periodic reporting mechanism. I understand that a major reform of the periodic reporting mechanism has been going on since 2017, and today we will hear from the Secretariat the latest updates on this important reform. I am also pleased to underline that this will set the scene for the first regional reporting cycle, which will involve all the states parties of Latin America and the Caribbean in 2020. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Cortes to introduce this item to us. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Indeed, this whole reform started, as I mentioned earlier this morning, with the 2-year-long elaboration of the overall results framework for the 2003 Convention, which was finally approved by the General Assembly in June 2018. The General Assembly and the Committee indicated how to reform the periodic reporting mechanism with the main objectives to enhance its usefulness and to allow for an increased submission of reports by states parties. They gave the Secretariat a clear guidance, and according to that, we undertook the reform in 2 main directions. Firstly, initiatives on the substance and methods of reporting. Without imposing additional reporting burdens on state parties, the reporting form has been fully aligned with the overall results framework. The new reporting mechanism is therefore a direct outcome of the adoption of the framework, and it implies the move towards a results-based rather than activities-based reporting. This will be, in turn, an opportunity for states not only to monitor their achievements in implementing the 2003 Convention, but also to give visibility to their efforts from the adoption of the Convention till now, in adopting and revising their policies and safeguarding approaches. The set of guidance notes we prepared to accompany states in their use of the overall results framework and in the monitoring of and reporting on their achievements is also an important step forward of the reform. The move to a regional cycle of reporting, that's the second part of the reform. As mentioned under item 5B earlier on, a specifically designed capacity building approach has been developed. Its main aim is to strengthen monitoring processes under the 2003 Convention in line with the overall results framework and to support states in their reporting exercise, while providing opportunities for peer-to-peer exchanges and facilitating cooperation and dialogue among states from the same region. As you may recall, last year the Committee adopted the calendar for the first regional cycle of reporting. States parties from Latin America and the Caribbean will be the first ones to submit their periodic reports by December 15 next year for examination by the Committee in 2021. They will be followed by Europe in 2021, Arab states in 2022, Africa in 2023, and Asia and the Pacific for 2024. The first cycle will then have a reflection year in 2025. Allow me to highlight that similarly to the reporting on the status of elements inscribed on the urgent safeguarding list, the reporting on elements inscribed on the representative list remains unchanged. This is because we expect that the ongoing reflection on the listing mechanisms and on related procedures will guide the revision of the reporting mechanisms for all elements inscribed. I would also like to take this opportunity to appreciate the financial contributions given by the Republic of Korea to support the reform of the periodic reporting mechanisms. As I said, during the presentation of the Secretariat's report under the overall results framework, states can set their own targets and plan their own actions accordingly and in meaningful ways. With your permission, Madam Chairperson, I would like now to ask my colleague, Giovanni Scheppi, to give us more details on the steps undertaken since the last committee meeting within the reform.
Thank you, team. I'm very pleased to address myself to the committee today and to inform you that the reform of the periodic reporting is now nearing completion. According to the guidance provided by our governing bodies, the core actions we undertook were in 3 main axes. Firstly, and most importantly, the revision of Form ICH 10 has been completed. Let me invite you to have a look at the screens so that I can show you how it looks like. A demo reporting is now available for test purposes, and it shows how the new form looks like. I'm sure you're familiar with our website. If you go on our webpage, the home page, you will have to click on the tab Periodic Reporting. Once there, on the left side, you can access this online test version. Once you click that button, that leads you to the new form, which, as you can see, is divided in 4 main sections. Section A provides with general information on the reporting state, including, among others, an executive summary of the report, all the elements inscribed in the different lists, a list of accredited non-governmental organizations in that country, the possibility to provide details on all the ICH inventories elaborated by the state, as well as synergies with other international frameworks and instruments which contributed to safeguarding the living heritage. Then, in Section B, it reflects the same structure of the overall results framework with its 26 core indicators and the corresponding assessment factors which were translated into questions that I hope will trigger results-based reporting. Then you have Section C on elements inscribed on the representative list, and this section remained the same as in the previous version of Form ICH 10. As explained by Tim, this is because the reflection on the listing mechanism and on related procedures will possibly provide the basis for a future revision of the reporting procedures on elements inscribed on any lists. Section D will then allow states to upload a signed version of the report once all the other sections have been completed. Finally, the first tab on the left allows states to have in one page an overview of their report, including baselines and targets for each indicator. I will go back to this aspect later on in my presentation. Now, the second important innovative aspect put in place is a set of 26 guidance notes, which have been prepared by the Secretariat this year, 1 for each core indicators. If you look at the screen, you can access them by going again on the home page of our convention and then on the section dedicated to the overall results framework. Once there, you will see the link to the guidance notes, which leads you to the bottom part of the page where all the 26 guidance notes are available in 3 different languages, English, French, and Spanish, since we will start in Latin America and the Caribbean next year. I hope that these guidance notes will help to the diverse stakeholders involved in the monitoring and reporting to interpret the indicators and to provide answers in their reports in a comparable way. They are structured around 2 main parts. The first one sets out the larger context, including possible connection with the Sustainable Development Goals, while the second part provides specific guidance on monitoring and reporting and gives an idea on their benefits, possible sources of information, and methodologies for collecting data. Finally, as the third main field in which the Secretariat focused this action, a capacity-building approach and related materials have been developed to assist states with the reporting exercise. The primary objective is to build institutional and professional capacities for the preparation of periodic reports and to strengthen monitoring processes. This approach mainly consists of a 3-day capacity-building workshop directed at focal points responsible for completing the reports for their respective countries. It explains also possible participatory methodologies and as a practical guidance on how to fill in and to fill out the online version of Form ICH 10. Distinguished committee members, let me recall now a few points concerning the rationale for the reform and the tools developed. First of all, the overarching principle of the overall results framework and the reporting exercise, which is that not all indicators will be equally applicable to the situation of different states. The degree to which indicator is satisfied will likely vary from indicator to indicator, as well as, of course, from state to state. Please be informed that the questions of the new form are often optional and not intended to include all the responsibility of a state party, nor are they equally relevant for all states parties. The online tool will use the answers provided by each state to assess to which extent an indicator is satisfied. And that will represent its baseline. States will also have the possibility of establishing targets and to create their own benchmarks against which progress can be measured in future reporting 6 years later. The new reporting tool is therefore an overall intended to provide states with a useful methodology for monitoring their own achievements, to give them visibility, and provide with an occasion to review and revise, if necessary, their safeguarding policies and approaches. Thanks to this new mechanism and the use of certain standards for states to provide information, the Committee and the General Assembly will also be able to better monitor the implementation of the 2003 Convention at different levels. Finally, it is important to underline that, even though quite advanced, the reform is not yet over. The Secretariat will continue addressing possible shortcomings based also on the reporting experience in the first region next year and on lessons learned along the way. Then, in 2025, as Tim said, the reflection year at the end of the first cycle, the functioning of the whole new reporting mechanism will be fully reviewed. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Giovanni. I would just like to conclude this part by inviting all of you, and especially the states parties from Latin America and the Caribbean, to an information session on the reform of the periodic reporting mechanism. That will be also an occasion to launch this officially the next regional cycle. This session will take place on Wednesday, 11th December at 1:30 p.m. in room Enye, on the 3rd floor. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. I believe that this information session on Wednesday will be indeed the right occasion to ask questions, especially on the technical aspects of the reform, including the newly designed online tool. But let me open now the floor for a general debate. Does anybody wish to take the floor? Austria?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, thank you to the Secretariat for the presentation now of the new form and for preparing the guidance notes in 3 languages already. The new form is quite impressive as well as a little bit daunting, I would say. Speaking from experience with online reporting tools, we have some practical questions. Will the reporting form be accessible at any time and for anyone, so also for those countries who are not reporting? Be available in another format, such as PDF or Word. Maybe somebody doesn't want me to ask these questions. Will it be possible to do kind of a backup of the data that has already been uploaded, because it's several steps that have to be completed, and well, and, do you hear me? Okay. And last. I don't know. Maybe I need to get my neighbors. And will the state party, after the submitting, get a summary of the content that was submitted, as well as a confirmation note or email? So these are very basic points, I know, but they can save or have a great positive impact on the overall experience. And then the second question would concern the capacity building that will assist state parties with the reporting exercise. It has been mentioned in our past meetings, as well as today, that capacity building approaches have been developed for the new reporting. And could the Secretariat please explain the approach further? So how and by whom should these workshops ideally be organized? And when and where should they be implemented, also with a view to future cycles in the next years? Thank you.
Thank you, Armenia. I'll give the floor to Senegal.
No, sorry. That was Austria, not Armenia.
Before?
That was Austria.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais adresser quand même mes félicitations au secrétariat et surtout à ce groupe qui a travaillé sur ce mécanisme. Parce que quand même, depuis la Chine, quand on a travaillé sur cette question importante de réforme de ce mécanisme dans le cadre du cadre global des résultats, vous avez fait quand même un énorme effort parce que les 26 orientations qui permettent de mieux utiliser les indicateurs ont été fournis et je pense que c'est déjà un grand pas. Le formulaire tel qu'il est présenté, assez interactif également, me semble tout à fait approprié, adapté, très très instructif et on a la possibilité effectivement à la fin de télécharger. Bon, bref, il y a quand même des questions qui avaient été abordées lors de ce groupe de travail en Chine et apparemment toutes ces questions ont été résolues plus ou moins, en tout cas en amont, par ce que vous avez fait. Donc félicitations pour ce travail. Maintenant, par rapport au renforcement de capacité, c'est important. Les rapports périodiques dans ce nouveau mécanisme régional permettront à plusieurs pays de se retrouver. C'est déjà des ateliers sur 3 jours, comme vous l'avez annoncé. Ces ateliers permettent d'avoir une plus grande maîtrise de certains outils. Et ce sont ces outils-là qui permettront à ces acteurs institutionnels, ONG et autres, de pouvoir quand même travailler à résoudre déjà le problème de rapport périodique, mais ensuite pour la mise en œuvre même de cette convention. Je pense que c'est cela qui est le plus important. C'est l'appréhension, du moins c'est la maîtrise de ces outils qui accompagnent le rapport, et ces outils vont se retrouver dans la mise en œuvre de la convention dans différents pays. Et surtout, ce sera un échange inter-pays au niveau régional. Et c'est en cela que c'est important. Il y a d'ailleurs une petite nuance, une petite synergie avec d'autres rapports périodiques, comme pour la 72, mais là, c'est assez spécifique. Il y a des questions quand même très claires qui ont été posées, notamment les 26 notes d'information. Donc, encore une fois, toutes nos félicitations pour ce travail qui a été fait entre le groupe de travail de Chine et maintenant. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Senegal. Arménie, tout à l'heure c'était Autriche, je m'excuse.
Non, c'est pas grave, madame. Merci, madame la présidente. La délégation de l'Arménie remercie le secrétariat pour avoir mené à bien la réforme du mécanisme de soumission des rapports périodiques conformément aux orientations données par l'Assemblée générale et le comité lors des différents débats. La simplification du formulaire de soumission des rapports, mise à disposition des notes d'orientation visant une meilleure information des États parties permettront certainement d'assurer à l'avenir un suivi plus efficace de la mise en œuvre de la Convention de 2003. Cette délégation se réjouit également des mesures prises pour renforcer les capacités institutionnelles et professionnelles des États pour la préparation des rapports périodiques et elle appuie aussi le passage à un cycle régional des rapports, soutient la mise en œuvre des activités de renforcement des capacités des États d'Amérique latine et des Caraïbes pour l'élaboration de leurs rapports périodiques. Et cette délégation souhaite, un petit peu dans la continuité de la question posée par la délégation de l'Autriche, en savoir plus justement sur les moyens qui sont mis à disposition pour renforcer les capacités institutionnelles et professionnelles des États dans la préparation des rapports périodiques. Merci, Madame.
Merci, merci beaucoup, l'Arménie. Welcome now to Poland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The State Party of Poland wishes to express its sincere appreciation for the work done by the Secretariat regarding the improvement of the periodic reporting mechanism. We recognize with satisfaction that the 2003 UNESCO Convention is seen from the perspective of SDH. This synergy is a path toward a brighter future and an assurance for improved functioning of the Convention. We hope that this new reform will help the state parties to manage their obligations regarding the reporting on the implementation of the 2003 Convention more easily. We are convinced that this tool will provide better visibility of the periodic reporting and will serve as a useful instrument and methodology for the monitoring of the state's achievements and ICH safeguarding approaching. In our view, the capacity-building approach, together with its workshop dedicated to better understanding of the complex of ICH international protection system, is essential. We truly hope that thanks to this approach, the monitoring processes of elements already inscribed and to be inscribed in the future on the representative list will gradually but significantly improve. It cannot be repeated too often that this mechanism is crucial for the comprehensive and, in fact, sustainable implementation of the 2003 Convention. In our opinion, the new regional periodic reporting will be helpful to recognize common matters and challenges in the field of intangible cultural heritage safeguarding. Thus, it might potentially result in intensified cooperation between state parties and therefore strengthen regional cooperation and even possibly increase transboundary and international nominations in the future. We are looking forward with optimism to the future result and the reflections of the first regional cycle in 2025, which will show us how this new periodic reporting mechanism is functioning. Lastly, however, to take the advantage of this opportunity, we wish to pose a question to the Secretariat regarding upcoming potential difficulties with completion of reports. Could it be clarified to what extent and in what number questions has to be answered, for example, in the face of the absence of some mechanism in a given state for the report to be deemed complete? Thank you.
Thank you, Poland. It's the turn of Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the enormous work that has been done in the case of the new reporting system, and we believe that the overall results framework is a very important instrument, not only for reporting, but also for setting targets by states. But in the text, in the document under item 8, it reads as follows. The indicators included in the framework and the questions in the reports will not all be equally applicable to the situations of different states, and the level of satisfaction is expected to vary from indicator to indicator and from one state to another. Our first question is, does this mean that state parties have the possibility to select the indicators and the questions on which they wish to report, and so have the possibility to focus on the main targets of their own implementation process? Or, even better, in cooperation with other member states in their region. So then it would not be necessary to fulfill all the indicators. And how will this... I'm sorry. And how will this be assessed in the totality of the reports? And our second question is about the capacity building workshops. When and where in the process will they take place? Because time is very limited for the Latin American countries and the Caribbean countries. Are there going to be capacity building workshops in all the regions? And are there enough resources? Because we understand this is dependent on voluntary contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Netherlands. At this stage, I will give the floor to Mr. Curtis.
Thank you. I think there's some emerging clusters of questions, if I may, that have come on from a number of them. The first ones, and there was a bit of a problem with the sound from Austria, but a number of questions about whether we can distribute the form in PDF form. That's not a problem. And whether the information will be saved. Indeed, technically the idea is it's an online reporting form and it then gets stored in the system. And that even 6 years later, you would be able to recheck what you had before. So that is foreseen, and I think a lot more details will be given in the side event specifically to get into some of those details. Then I have questions about whether all indicators have to be answered. There's an of not relevant, and it's not that all indicators necessarily therefore need to be answered, because a state may say we don't consider this indicator relevant to our situation, and then there's a box to explain why so. Okay, so in the overall sense, the obligations of reporting overall, the core obligations as set out in the text of the operational directives will remain, that you have to list as was the old form, certain your institutions related to intangible cultural heritage, but the indicators of the overall results framework are not all compulsory for all states. And there's been some rearranging. As was said earlier, in terms of where was I? The core, yeah. So the list, the sections on the lists we didn't touch, either the urgent safeguarding list or that part of the periodic reporting form on the representative list elements. And the reason we didn't touch them is it doesn't make sense to do all that work now when we're about to embark on a reflection on reform of the listing mechanisms. The other questions concerned, so I think that addressed the question of whether all elements have to be answered. An interesting thing is also this will become the baseline for monitoring the convention. That's the best we could do, and the states are given the option, if they so wish, to set their own targets for 6 years. So it should help states also define where they want to go in 6 years, state by state, and that's just an extra for each state party to decide if it so wishes to do it. It's not compulsory, but it's there as a tool. So we're trying to provide a tool that helps states at the national level, but that also allows us to gather data at the international level. Concerning capacity building, we've built approaches and we've foreseen 3-day workshops. Indeed, it is dependent on funding available. We're not sure, but the capacity building will do region by region as it goes to all regions. So what we plan to do is to start early in the year. Hopefully next year we're still speaking to some states in the region, and part of it will be the famous 20% of the fund, which is the upstream work, and that is also foreseen, to develop those materials and to do training of trainers. So we imagine the focal points responsible for periodic reporting can be gathered on a regional level, and first of all we have to train our facilitators how to train them, and then they should be able to train within the country and to run the periodic reporting. That's our aim on how to roll it out. But we will be juggling with funding in terms of being able to implement this as it comes up. And we'll be able again to talk perhaps in more detail during the side event on how we'll deal. And to be honest, at the moment, we're just grappling with how we're going to deal with Latin America and the Caribbean next year. And then we'll start thinking how we roll out into the other regions. Although we have an offer already for Europe the year after, an informal offer from Malta to host a meeting of trainers. I think I've answered. The question was, yes, will states be able to access the form before it's their region? Yes, they will access, but we will not process the data, I don't think. That's something we can think about more.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis, for answering the questions and giving us some more detailed information about this important item. I'll give the floor now to Cyprus.
Good evening. The delegation of Cyprus also wishes to thank the Secretariat for the enormous work they have invested in revising the Form ICH 10, as well as for the guidance notes. All of us who have already put together a periodic report and know what a colossal work this is, were really grateful. Most importantly, these reforms provide the Convention State members with useful tools and enable us to monitor and evaluate our own safeguarding measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyprus. Now, Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Philippines thinks it's a very good and practical approach to move towards a regional periodic reporting system. And like other delegations, we'd like to recognize the tremendous hard work put in by the Secretariat, and including the guidance notes. Looking ahead, we'd like to ask the Secretariat, when the reports are submitted, will the Secretariat summarize the reports and synthesize cross-cutting issues as it has done in the past? And when we look ahead to future committee sessions, will we have the same approach where we'll have a draft decision as it stands now about the states parties reports from that particular region in that particular year? Would that decision have recommendations, observations? It would be good to just get a sense of what how much has changed the system and what hasn't, what will be the same. Like others, we think that to have a meaningful periodic reporting system, we should consider how to involve other actors, such as regional mechanisms and also accredited NGOs. We see many opportunities in this new cycle which can broaden the spectrum of cooperation and dialogue between stakeholders in terms of provision of information, assessment of reports, and follow-up. Since the periodic reporting system is quite complex with the new online tool, we feel the same way as others that capacity building is central to the success of its outputs. And we, as Mr. Curtis mentioned earlier, I think today he mentioned an online MOOC, and I think online tools would help very much also to acquaint states, parties, and actors with the new system. And lastly, Giovanni mentioned about the database of indicators and baselines, and this would be, of course, a rich database for living heritage as it is now across the world. One concern we've voiced in the development of this system before, and again looking ahead, is that we hope that these baselines wouldn't be used as a kind of comparison between states, parties, and levels, considering that each state party is very different and in its level of development. So we just want to again reiterate this concern, and we hope that we don't move to this comparison system or rating system through this periodic reporting mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines. Now I'll give the floor to Jamaica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of what has been said is in line with our own position. And in that regard, I really would like to congratulate and thank the Secretariat for the work that has gone into these proposed changes. And as one of the group of guinea pigs who will be initiating the supporting system, we are excited, at the same time approaching it with some trepidation. But we are looking forward to taking part in this process and to see how it will work. We realize that it is still a work in progress, and we are happy to be a part of that process. And we look forward to engaging further when we have the information session on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamaica. Before continuing, I'll give the floor to Mr. Curtis.
Just quickly to address some of the questions that came up. I believe the Philippines had some questions about whether there'll be synthetic reports, and I think that's the idea is almost with the indicators, there's some aspects that become almost automatically generated, but there will still be quite a bit of analysis, substantive analysis, and written analysis. The question of comparison is always a concern as soon as you start monitoring things with indicators and numerical indicators. And we are aware of that. Can I say it won't happen at all? It depends also how people read those numbers and how they decide to use them. And we are careful of that. That is why we are careful to say not all indicators have the same implication for the same states. It may not only be development level, it may be size, country, maybe a whole range of questions. So I suspect we're gonna, this is a risk and we're aware of it. And I think it's also how, it's important to be careful how these numbers get presented when they get generated. But yes, there's always that concern. The question of, and just concerning, coming back to what Jamaica said, yes, we see it as a system that will have to evolve. We don't expect to have everything perfect right from the beginning, but I must say it's been a lot of work for the colleagues to get this done, and we hope it's ready for the region next year, but we expect that there will need to be fine-tuning and improvements over the years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Now I'll give the floor to our Azerbaijan.
Thank you.
Microphone, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, it's not working.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the Secretariat for presenting the details on the main points of the reform. It is indeed a remarkable moment in the evaluation of the 2003 Convention, and our delegation looks forward to consider the revised ICH 10 form. We also join the previous speakers in highlighting the importance of the periodic reporting mechanism in strengthening the monitoring of the implementation of 2003 Convention, as we believe that this is also a very important tool for the safeguarding of the ICH, which reflects the spirit of this 2003 Convention. We consider that it is of utmost importance to make available online the reports once they received, to ensure the better transparency of the reformed periodic reporting mechanism. And in this regard, we would also remind the Secretariat that at the 9th session of the committee, there was a decision taken 9.5a, which called upon the states to work with the Secretariat in order to avoid in their periodic reports any language inconsistent with the UN Charter, as well as with the relevant provisions of 2003 Convention. And I would request the Secretariat to meticulously pursue this principle while applying the reformed periodic reporting mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Azerbaijan. I have 3 more countries, Guatemala, China, and I close the floor with Colombia. Please, por favor, Guatemala, adelante.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Quiero agradecer a la Secretaría por el trabajo realizado en cuanto a lo que es este sistema de evaluación. América Latina tiene una base histórica en común que tenemos desde el siglo XVI al siglo XVIII, por lo que el estandarizar la información de los informes de PCI puede convertirse en una valiosa herramienta para poder lograr una mejor comprensión de esta área. Guatemala, como país miembro del CRESPIAL, ha estado apoyando para lo que es todas las actividades de formación de formadores que vamos a estar desarrollando a nivel latinoamericano. Y creo que se nos viene un trabajo interesante, un trabajo fuerte que tenemos que hacer para poder cumplir con esta misión encomendada. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Guatemala. China, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chinese delegation would like to congratulate on the great progress that has been made on the reform of the periodic reporting mechanism. As we can recall, in the year 2017, the open-ended working group was held in Chengdu, China, during which the experts were discussed on and work out the preliminary framework, all results from a framework, and which was submitted to the GA, the 7th GA, in the year 2018, and was finally approved. And now at this session, we were very well informed by the Secretariat on how they have worked on the reformed mechanism, and which will be into the finalized stage. So we do believe that this is a very important move during the development of the periodic reporting mechanism, and therefore we commend the Secretariat for its tremendous efforts in this regard. I don't want to repeat again the questions that the previous speakers has mentioned regarding to the real use of the mechanism, but we do believe there's still some more questions will be raised regarding to the real use of this mechanism. So since we can, it is very obvious, we can see that from the introduction of the Secretariat, there is a quite complex system of the online reporting system, which will be we do believe it will be very complicated, and to what extent it will be very easy access or user-friendly, and how to involve the various actors in this process. So we do look forward to gain a lot more information and to learn from the other states parties when they are really involved in this periodic reporting system. So finally, we would like to thanks again for the Secretariat for its great efforts in this regard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, China. Finally, Colombia, por favor, los escuchamos.
Aló. Muchas gracias, señora presidenta, por la palabra. También como Estado parte, que hará parte de este primer periodo del nuevo mecanismo de reforma periódica, compartimos un poco la sensación con Jamaica de emoción, pero también de mucha expectativa para conocer más a fondo todo el procedimiento de este nuevo mecanismo de reforma. Agradecemos el reporte detallado que ha preparado el Secretariado, y particularmente agradecemos la sesión de información que se va a realizar el miércoles a la 1 de la tarde. Yo creo que para todos los estados, particularmente para los de nuestro grupo de América Latina y del Caribe, va a ser de gran importancia. Recomendamos pues, tener en cuenta las preguntas que han surgido en este momento en el comité, especialmente todo lo que tiene que ver con respecto a la transparencia de la información que se va a proveer en estos nuevos informes, que van a ser muy importantes en cuanto al desarrollo del marco de resultados más amplio de la Convención 2003. Y por supuesto queremos saber en esa sesión más con respecto al taller de capacitación de 3 días previsto, por ejemplo, aclarando la participación de los actores que estarán ahí más allá de los Estados miembros del comité, teniendo en cuenta, por ejemplo, también la participación de centros de categoría 2 en esta idea de unos informes periódicos de carácter regional. Entonces, de nuevo, agradecer al secretariado por la preparación de la información y los acompañaremos, por supuesto, en la sesión de información del miércoles a la 1:30 de la tarde. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Colombia. Now we will give you some reminders, special on events and practical information. Do you want to answer it right now? Okay. No, before I do that, I'll give the floor to Mr. Curtis to answer some questions.
Sorry, Madam Chairperson, very briefly and not to extend the discussion because there are some points raised both by Colombia and China which are important. Indeed, we are aware of the complexities and we have tried to make it as user-friendly. So a lot of the questions will be simple, yes, no, to what degree, maybe, partially, so that the information gets correlated. Nevertheless, each time there will be boxes for states who wish to develop a more substantive description of what's going on, which which are not necessarily compulsory. A lot of this will be explained, and it is complex, but we've been very careful to try to make it as user-friendly. I have no doubt as we actually use it, we will learn, and over the years we will look at improving the system. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you that every morning from tomorrow, the Bureau will meet at 9 a.m. in room N-O on the 3rd floor. The vice chairpersons from Austria, Poland, Philippines, Zambia, and Palestine, as well as our rapporteur, Mr. Bernard Janki from Jamaica, please be there on time so we can begin promptly. The meeting of the Bureau is open to observers. I would like also to remind members of the committee to send their requests to discuss or amend specific draft decisions concerning nominations before tomorrow, Tuesday, 10th December, prior to the Bureau meeting at 9 a.m. This will allow the Bureau to better organize the time available for debating these items. I will now pass the floor to the Secretary for a few practical announcements. Because it's already 5:30, even more than that, we'll go back to the decision tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to announce and to remind you that there is a welcoming reception, first hosted by the Colombian government at 5:40 p.m. in the lobby on the 3rd floor here. And this is a pre-reception to the official opening ceremony, which will take place at 7 p.m. at the auditorium of Corferias. I also remind you to please take your belongings before you leave, as the room will be accessible. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Thank you, the members of the committee. Our session of the committee will start tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. sharp. Please be on time. I hereby declare today's session closed.